Well guys, it has been a long time since I was able to do a video like this, but I'm finally able to announce I have now finished the 2021 UFL season. The last season of 2020 ended like in 2021, I think. And of course, over the last few years, just like with PFA, I haven't really done much with it because I didn't want to do all the work like I used to do with the videos and all that. But I just spent last night updating all the quarterbacks. I updated all the stats on my Word file for UFL's most recent season, all that. And of course, I finished the last two videos of the 2020 season. So now, I was finally starting late last night into just now, almost an entire day. I simulated the 2021 UFL season. Now, I didn't do what I normally would do with PFA, which I'm still doing the 2019 PFA season, which is why that video hasn't happened yet, where I look at the matchups, calculate the percent chance to win, find out the random chance who wins, and then simulate it until they win and not have terrible stats. I overinflated the defensive player stats so well that they're making QBs and all them play terrible. So, took a lot longer and all that, especially since there's no forced wins. So, PFA's taking a while. But UFL, I managed to get done. Just simulating, letting whatever results happen as they go. Except if the players play bad, then I'll resimulate until they don't play as terrible. Because it's going to be a while before UFL's fully fixed. It's going to take several years to get all right and all that for the players to be good. But, I'm happy the season's now over. Season number 5 is in the books, so let's take a look at the recap. So here is how the 2021 UFL season ended, with the Minnesota Tundra, who struggled last year, somehow went 11-5 to clinch the Eastern Midwest. Indiana started off slow, they were like 1-4 and whatever, but then they turned around near the end of the year to go 9-7 and just barely sneak into the playoffs. The Detroit Drivers were pretty much around 500 all year as they went 7-9 with a bad offense, but a solid defense. But the St. Louis Rockets, they were 12-4 last year. Number 2 seed before they lost to Buffalo in the divisional round. They went 0-16 with one of the worst offenses ever and the worst defense in UFL history. Oh my god, they were so horrendous. I don't know how it happened. And a lot of times they were like the 2017 Browns where they were winning games and then they decided to lose them. That's the first time ever in UFL history a team went winless. And no, the Quebecs last year don't count because they had a tie. So yeah, terrible season for St. Louis. They have the number 1 overall pick going into 2022. The Miami Zombies, after being the wildcard team last year, roared back. They were 9-1 at one point, but then they choked near the end of the year to finish 11-5, costing them the number 1 seed. As the Tampa Bay Cyclones, the runner-ups to the championship last year, struggled most of the year as they finished 8-8. The Memphis Warhawks, they started off good, actually, start off the year, but then they had a 4-game losing streak near the end, but they ended up winning their final 4 games to finish 8-8. And the Houston Bullets went 5-11, regressing from last year, but at the same time, their quarterback still played really good, so that's really odd. The Buffalo Terriers, after having a strong finish last year, make it to the conference championship, they started off 7-0 before they finished 11-5, also costing them a chance at the number 1 seed. And Pittsburgh played really good all year as they finished 10-6. Washington struggled all year as they finished 6-10, and Baltimore also struggled as they finished 6-10. And the Eastern Pacific, the Oakland Magic, start off really good. Then they were 6-2 at one point. Then they lost 3 in a row. Looked like they were about to lose a chance at making the playoffs, but then they won their final 5 games to make it in at 11-5. The Utah Eagles were inconsistent all year, but they went 8-8. The Anaheim Rockies, they started off 0-3, but then they turned it around to finish 8-8 themselves. And the Seattle Cougars, they were around the middle of the pack for most of the year. Then they had to turn around near the end to finish 7-9. Then the Western Midwest, oh my god, the Kansas Engineers, they won the division at 8-8. Everyone was terrible offensively throughout the year except for the elite defenses. It came down to the final week where Green Bay had to visit Kansas. Whoever won the division. Kansas won, thankfully, so they were able to clinch the division, which they really needed. Actually, no, it was the second to last week, I think it was. No, it was the last week of the year. So Green Bay had a chance to clinch the division after they went 12 13-3 last year. Not going to be able to do it this year as they went 6-10 with a horrible offense. Cincinnati Wolves also struggled all year as they went 5-11. And the Canton Greats. Horrible, horrendous offense. Just as bad as, honestly, as St. Louis were as they went 2-14. The New Orleans Sharks, who made the playoffs last year, stunned everyone as they went 15-1, just like the defending champion Columbia Marines did last year. Dominant season defensively as they cruised all the way to the number 1 seed. The defending champion Columbia Marines, they actually struggled early on the year. They were 5-4. They started off 2-0, but then they kept alternating wins as their defense was bad. Their offense was good, but their defense was bad. But after that 5-4 start, they won all the remaining games to go 12-4 and make it as a wild card. The Atlanta Suns, their offense was horrible. Their defense was really good, though, as they went 6-10. And the Jackson Boxers, they started off 0-6, but then they finished 5-6 the rest of the way to salvage their season somewhat to go to 5-11. The New York Kings, after so many elite starts and terrible finishes, they finally broke through with one of the league's best defenses, as also one of the league's best offenses too, as they went 14-2, which was barely enough to clinch the Western Atlantic, but they couldn't get the number 1 seed, home title advantage. And the Philadelphia Pythons, one of the best teams in the league, they actually struggled early on, but they, just like Columbia, finished 12-4, but this time had to sell as a wild card. The Boston Cruisers struggled all year to finish 6-9-1, and the Montreal Quebecs, who were 0-15-1 last year, actually had a pretty solid season. Their offense was still horrendously bad, but their defense was really good, as they finished 6-9-1, a massive improvement from the year before. And the Western Pacific, the Lubbock Pilots, all year round, the division was fought for, but Lubbock in the end won it, going 11-5. The Phoenix Dust Devils, the winners last year, they had a strong start for most of the year. They were 9-4 with 3 weeks remaining, easily on track to get a playoff spot, and they went on to lose all their 3 remaining games to miss the playoffs. Sucks to suck. Los Angeles started off 0-2, then they won 5 in a row. It looked like, ooh, maybe they were going to be a threat this year, but nope, they flipped all over the place near the end of the year as they went 8-8, missed the playoffs. And the Denver Talons, they signed John Parsons, Minnesota's former quarterback, to be the starter, and he completely flamed out as Denver had one of the worst offenses in the league. Their defense was still somewhat okay, but not a good year overall for them as they lost their 7 games left to finish 4-12. So, in the playoffs, the standings, while it was in the Eastern Conference, as both Minnesota, Miami, and Buffalo were 11-4, looking like one of them was going to fight out to get the number 1 seed. Meanwhile, Oakland was way back at 10-5, like they're not going to do it. But then the unthinkable happened. Minnesota, Miami, and Buffalo all lost, and Oakland won, so they all finished 11-5, messing up all the playoff standings. So because of that, Minnesota got the number 1 seed somehow, and Buffalo was number 2 with the byes. Miami fell all the way down to the 3rd seed. No, Oakland moved up to the 3rd seed, and Miami fell all the way down from the number 1 seed to the 4th seed. Oof, big opportunity wasted right there, as Pittsburgh clinched the 5th seed when they knocked off Buffalo, and Indiana, with a needed victory, managed to clinch the last wild card spot. But, of course, the Western Conference had the best teams, as the New Orleans Sharks not only clinched home field advantage, they clinched home title advantage. They host the title game if they make it all the way there. And then New York was the number 2 seed, as they had the 2nd in the title advantage. So if New Orleans didn't make it, they would host instead. And the Lubbock Pilots managed to get the 3rd seed. Kansas, of course, was the 4th seed. The defending champion Columbia Marines were the 5th seed. And Philadelphia managed to sneak in as the 6th seed. And here were the leaders of the 2021 season in terms of stats. David Vaugh, Columbia's quarterback, threw for over 5,100 yards and threw 41 touchdowns in a much better season, although it didn't seem like it when they choked near the end of the year and all that. And Indiana's running back, Sean Dort, had over almost 1,700 rushing yards and 10 touchdowns, a league in rushing yards. Passing touchdowns went to Brandon Salas of the Miami Zombies, 45 touchdowns, a nice bounce back year. Sucks they couldn't get the number 1 spot and all that they blew. And receiving yards, Columbia's tight end, David Salazar, had 2,100 yards as a tight end. And by the way, that's not the first time he did that. He had 2,000 yards in 2019 as well, and 16 touchdowns. What a dominant season that was for him, a tight end leading the league in receiving yards. And of course, we get to defensive stats, as you see. Denver's Christopher Benson had 204 tackles, which is quite high for a linebacker. Defensive end from Green Bay, George Galvan, had 41 sacks, which is really high, but compared to the previous years, it's not as high. So, thankfully, defensive stats starting to go down quite better from previous years. But interceptions went massively up, as look at that. Tampa Bay, Dwayne Blaze, had 20 interceptions. You're seeing it right there, folks. 6 of the best defenders had 10 or more interceptions. Unbelievable. That's how lopsided it was. It seems this year is more towards interceptions instead of sacks. But yeah, these defensive stats are out of whack. And hopefully over the years they'll get fixed up over time, because I'm only going to update quarterbacks from now on. And finally we wrap up with the playoffs. As it started off with Indiana at Oakland. And in that game, Oakland it was back and forth, but going to the fourth quarter, Oakland had a 20-10 lead. Indiana had a massive rally comeback to tie it up to go into overtime, where Oakland won it 26-20 to move on to the divisional round once again. And then it was Philadelphia at Kansas, as of course Philadelphia going against an 8-8 team. They dominated. It wasn't a match, as Philadelphia won 31-17 to move on to the divisional round. Then it was the defending champion Columbia visiting Lubbock, who beat them earlier in the year when they visited them. This time around, Columbia got obliterated by Lubbock 34-13 in a shellacking, an unbelievable shellacking, as they were destroyed in the second half, as Lubbock dethroned Columbia, as we're going to have a new champion going into this year. Yikes for Columbia. And then, of course, wrap up the wild card was Pittsburgh at Miami, and Miami continued to struggle as Pittsburgh dominated with a 21-7 victory to move on to the divisional round. Then, in the divisional round, it started off with Oakland visiting Buffalo, and Oakland would spank Buffalo, just like Buffalo spanked St. Louis last year, as Oakland beat them 21-13 as they moved on to the conference championship for the first time ever. And then, the arch rivalry, Philadelphia at New York. Philadelphia took a 10-0 lead early on into the game, but New York's defense shut them down afterwards, made Jason Bartlett one of the best quarterbacks in the league look like trash, and New York won 17-10 to make the conference championship for the first time ever. Then, it was Lubbock at New Orleans, and Lubbock stunned New Orleans, beating them 10-6 as New Orleans' offense shit the bed once again, and Lubbock stunned New Orleans and will make the conference championship for the first time since first time ever, I believe, as they had to visit the new second seed in New York. And then Pittsburgh visited Minnesota, as Pittsburgh actually had a fourth quarter lead going in 14-9, but then Minnesota shut them down afterwards to win 27-14 to make the conference championship for only the second time ever, first time since 2017, I believe. So then, the conference championship started off with Oakland at Minnesota, as Minnesota was spanking pretty good at one point, had a 17 lead, but then Oakland rallied to score 24 unanswered points, and would hold on to win 27-24 to make the UFL title game for the first time ever, where they were going to have to visit either Lubbock or New York. And in the other conference championship, Lubbock at New York. New York was down 14-10 nearing the end of the game before, with 1:38 remaining, they got the game-winning touchdown to move on 17-14 to make the title game for the first time ever. So, the 2021 UFL title game, Oakland at New York. What a game it was. It was all defense, as after the first quarter, Oakland was up 7-0. After the second quarter, Oakland was up 10-0. And then finally, very early on to the third quarter, New York finally got a touchdown, but going to the third quarter, Oakland was still up 10-7. And then the fourth quarter, with 4 minutes remaining, Oakland had a touchdown. They went for a 2-point conversion, but they couldn't convert it. They get a 16-7 lead. New York drove downfield, but they couldn't get anything going, and time expired, and New York stunned everyone by winning the UFL title 16-7 to clinch the 2021 UFL championship. What a season was for Oakland. So congratulations to the Oakland Magic for being the 2021 UFL champions. Imagine being 6-2, then 6-5, out of the playoffs at that moment, but then they went on to win all the 5 remaining games, and then they beat, in all close games pretty much, Indiana in overtime 26-20. Then they beat Buffalo 21-13. Then they beat Minnesota 27-24 before beating Oakland 16-7 for the UFL title game. That is insane. And by the way, that was the first time ever UFL title holder New York that lost in the title game. No team before it hosted the title game has lost in the title game. This was the first, as Oakland pulled it off. So yeah, guys, I hope you enjoyed the recap of the 2021 UFL season. It was nice to finally get back to this after like 3 years. So I might take a little bit of time before I get to 2022, because back in 2020, I actually started making new logos for the team, so they're not doing helmets and all that. They were supposed to be made for this upcoming year, but they never got finished. I haven't done any work on them in a while, so I might wait and try and get them all done before I do them, so I could show them off in the future. And also, a new thing I forgot to mention too, a rule change from last year. I now have overtime in the regular season. Beforehand, there was no overtime, so whoever was tied up at the end of the game would tie right then and there. But last year, there were so many ties, I decided to implement overtime, and we still had a tie, which was funny enough, between Boston and Montreal, but that was the only tie throughout the year, so that was a lot better and all that. Plus, it was fun if we had an overtime game in the playoffs once again, because I think it happened before. Alright, guys, so I hope you enjoyed the 2021 UFL season. Hopefully I'll be more motivated to get PFA done, so I can get back to that and do a video on that too. So anyways, hope you enjoyed.